Alright, so just going to go over how to display virtual currency from the Playfab plugin through Game Manager and in Engine as well. And this is not recommended for live, like an actual version. You'd want to do this through cloudscript and avoid exposing these things to the client to manipulate. This is only for debugging purposes only. So basically, we have game instance, game mode, player controller, and third person character. This is derived off of a C++ project, and we're going to look at the UI. So we have currency UI, login UI, main menu, and Playfab UI. Playfab UI is not really something you have to worry about, but you'll see when we open up the main menu, you'll be able to see what exactly happens. So basically, if we open up here, we want to start the project. I'm going to go from the end backwards. Actually, just move this off to the side. Basically, just gotta wait. All right, so we're in right now. Now, I'm just going to very quickly log in, and we're going to see a menu pop up. All right, so in the top left, you can see a whole bunch of text. We don't need to worry about that. That's just debugging. But in the middle, we have something different. So we have unique player ID. Playfab, when you create an account through the portal or through like their game manager, it'll assign you an ID, and that'll be what you use to make calls within the engine. This is just based off of my Steam ID for the project that I was working on. So then there's also, a number plus add 500 currency. So we're going to very quickly click on that. 13,000. Now, there is no save system set up for this, so we're going to very quickly just exit out of it. And this is exposed straight to the to Playfab. So those values are pulled from Playfab. So now if we go back, so it was at 13,000, we're just going to launch the game again. All right, so this, all right, Steam has signed in, or Steam has indicated that it is launched. Basically, it's hooked in. So now we hit that, and then it pulls that information. So now we're still at 13,000. This is without saving it because we're adding this value here, the 13,000. That is through Playfab, and we are making the call to Playfab to increase it. And then the unique player ID is, of course, our unique login if you were just using the normal blueprint with advanced sessions. So how does this work? Well, this is based off of a tutorial done by Chives, and I wanted to explore a bit more in terms of basically getting information and exposing it in Engine and hooking it all up. So Steam authentication, this works. So Playfab has add-ons that you use to make it easier to not really have to worry about SDK or making sure that all the proper files are where they need to be. So sign in with Steam, you obtain the player auth token, and this is just if it fails, that way we know, and get player controller just in case you have, player controller, pretty much. Now, it makes the request, you feed the auth token in to Playfab, and then Playfab, you fire this function through the client API, and with the result, it sets this string variable as the Playfab ID. It also, because this is returning the success, it successfully logged you in, which means that you are signed in on Playfab send, and init functions, and then it just prints a debug string, which we can actually remove right now because we don't need it. So you go, oh, what are init functions? Well, here they are. Get player inventory. These are functions that you don't really want to call until you're signed in with Playfab. So get player inventory, and then it creates main menu UI widget, adding it to the viewport, and then it obtains these two as well. These two can honestly go in front. It won't really change anything. The main thing was just getting the player inventory to have that there. So let's go down to the first one. So get player inventory. This is more for getting virtual currency, getting inventory. Playfab supports a lot of this, and I can always explore more later. But this is mainly just from experimenting in the game instance for a simpler version. But you're able to set the values here, and because you set the array, because you got that information, you can now manipulate it in Engine and update it to Playfab. This is like stuff that not really focused on right now. So, and then get title news. There's a lot here as well. It's all based off of tutorials done by Chives, so credit to him. I'll link that and whatnot. Same thing with get title data, that sort of stuff. We're not really focused on that. We're mainly focused on virtual currency because this is something that he did not go too much depth into, and I want to. I'm not inclined on really like ripping off people's work. So you go, all right. So we create the main menu UI widget. Let's go here. All right, main menu UI. So we have two here, and this is just to show these, and we have Playfab UI and Currency UI. Playfab UI is the unique player ID, which will be different for each person, and if you were having stuff like a person needing to make a report, you would want them to like fill in their unique ID uh, in the report. That way you can find it when you look up logs. Um, However, like that sort of stuff, you'd want it on like a settings, and you would want it hidden. This is just not hidden right now because there's no need to. And then this is a bit different. It's a little wonky because it's like the entire thing, but it is supposed to be vertical. So we'll look at Playfab UI first, just to see how it's done. So we have the player ID. This is not a variable. However, this is like you need to have it be a variable. That way it's able to be fiddled with. So on construct, we fire getting player ID. Getting player ID. You go, okay. So you want the target to be a widget. This is not gameplay. So we have like get game instance. You can see this is more of a like actual game compared to this would be this is more for non-gameplay actions. So then we cast it, and there are better ways to like handle this sort of stuff. I'm not really aware of that, but just for now, this works just fine. So you may recall we had Playfab ID here. So if we go all the way over here, we set the we set the value from the result, which means that this has our Playfab ID when it's all signed in. So let's go back, and it goes, okay, to text string, because it's a string, and it returns the value as a text, and then you say, all right, here's the variable, the text block that you want to be changed. You want this to be updated with whatever information. You don't want it to be locked into like main menu and whatnot. Nothing like what the other one is, where it's like unique player ID. That if you're going to localize, would be different. But for our purposes, you don't really need to mess with it. But with Playfab ID text, you do, and this is how you set it. You do set text, and sometimes it won't show up. Can see nothing. So normally you have to do that, and then it'll pop up depending on how you do that. So every time it's constructed, basically it's created, you will get your player ID from the game instance. And you really, this is probably the best way to handle it because you won't really need to save it because every time that they start up the game, it'll retrieve it. That way you're not storing anything. Well, you know what I mean. It's just like, is that a better way to handle it? And this makes it easier because we don't need to include like handling the UI from here. So we just set it to be the variable, and then we retrieve it, and then set the text. So that sets this to be our player ID whenever we sign in. And if we had a different Steam account, then it would be different. So now we approach placeholder and add 500 currency from currency UI. So let's go here. All right, so it does look a little weird. It's a little squished, but with a wrap box, it will either handle it with a vertical aspect or horizontal. So we have GC text placeholder, our placeholder currency text box. We have to make sure that it's a variable. And then the debug button, also a variable. This is so we can mess with it here. So I'll start it here. So every time that this widget is created, it calls the update currency. This is important. That way you are able to retrieve the most up-to-date value from Playfab. Now what does it do? So updating currency, you're getting the inventory because that contains the data that you want. And on failed, it'll go to like a failed function. This is just to help. And this is all gone over by Chives. I'm just going over it again quickly. So it'll provide the information that you want. So let's go back. So on success, the result will include virtual currency. It'll also include inventory and virtual currency recharge times, so you can see here, as well as the request. You don't need these, so it's just easier. It's a personal opinion to hide that. So we set, what do we set? We set virtual currency. Okay, well, this is a JSON object. That means that you need to retrieve the data. And this has gone over by Chives as well. Um, so get field names. Okay. And it's a playfab JSON blueprint. And then you do a get array. In order to make changes, you have to get a reference array, a ref. So like you get array, you'll see get a copy. So as you can see with the little pop-up, it's saying that because it's a copy, changes will not be propagated back to the array. But for this purpose, you want to make changes. So you would want a ref, which is what we picked. And get number field, because we're mainly focused on, dimension 1, the first entry. In this case, we only have one currency defined by Playfab. If we had more, then we would want separate in terms of, like, we would want to take this out here, and so if we had like more than one currency, would go get ref, and then increase it by 1, and that'll get the next one, because arrays start on 0. And or you could do a for loop, and multiple things you can do. But we get number field, because we're getting the number, we're not getting the code name for it. And then to a float, or it would be better to do it to an integer. and then you would set the text to be GC text, which is what we have the placeholder named GC text, and then it updates. And then, all right, so how do we manipulate this in runtime in terms of adding, and this isn't recommended by Playfab because it increases the chance of people cheating, but this is just for debugging purposes. Add currency debug button, add user virtual currency, making sure that you do client API. You make the request. This is so you can indicate how much and the code for whatever one you're wanting to increase. In this case, we have GC. And when it fails, it has the same function, failed, up here. That's just to make sure it's a consistent response in terms of what we know went wrong. But there is the success fires updating currency UI. So it's adding whatever this is into here. Once it succeeds, it updates the currency. And then it retrieves the up-to-date currency, and voila. You pretty much, you could probably do more, but that's mainly how you are able to manipulate currency in real time and keep it compact into the UI. Now with the UI, all you have to do is essentially you can add this UI anywhere. And of course we take out the debug button and it'll update every time you do a cloud function, which is what you generally want to do. So just to show an example, I'm going to do this, launch the game, because I want to show why you want to do cloudscript instead of doing this in engine, because then that means people can do it in engine. So access to Steam community, and we're just this is because Steam, Playfab won't really work unless you're signed in, and we wanted to do a Steam integration. So, and login, immediately added. We retrieve our information. So we add, we added 1,000, another 1,000. But now we're going to go over to Playfab, and the default settings do not allow the client to add currency. So I've just disabled it, and this is what will pop up. As you can see, this client must be enabled for client access. So you generally want this to be handled by the cloud script that you can do through automation, and it's just a lot better in terms of security-wise. Otherwise, you risk the chance of players, ruining ruining the economy if you're doing a particular game, or if you are, I want to say, wanting to pay gate stuff, certain content, then and do microtransactions, you can't really, you don't want to rely on that just to be secure. So that'll be it. I'm going to enable this again on their on the game manager just to show you. All right, it's enabled, and then I go back, add another 500. So I'm gonna do some more stuff, but yeah, just let me know. It was fun figuring this out. Thank you, Chives, for this. I'm gonna link some of his videos because that's how I got started. But yeah, that's how you mainly handle updating virtual currency in UE4 and Playfab in Engine instead of doing it through Game Manager. All right, thanks, and bye. Oh, give me a suggestion if you want something else covered, because I'm doing a lot of this and I don't really mind approaching a particular topic. So, thanks.